Morning, beloveds. It's springtime. I love spring, and I love a lot of things about spring. I love during springtime you get this shade of green that you don't get any other time of the year, and I love the birds singing and the flowers blooming and all of that. And my allergies hate spring. It's like summer and winter, my allergies are eh. And spring and fall, my allergies are like, oh, we're gonna. And I'm just like, really? Because I love springtime, except for my allergies. So, which, I mean, I have ways to mitigate that. There's a couple of supplements that I take that help balance out my allergies. And, there are things like change your pillowcases and wipe down your hair and not open your windows. Minimize your time outside, which defeats the purpose of spring. But, you do what you can and then you just deal with it. They're not that bad. They're not that bad. I mean, I can still get out and go and do. I just occasionally sound froggy. That's all. And the palms are, it's been fun to watch them. It has absolutely been fun to watch them because they go from, when people cut their fronds off, then they have these real spiky things. And then suddenly they have these little pyramids, and then the pyramids kind of start to spread, and they curl up like Grinch fingers, and they're green, so Grinch fingers. And then they start to curl out, and it's just fascinating. And then they're this gorgeous shade of green that, I mean, you get so used to seeing the palm trees, you don't see it anymore. And then we had the frost, and so it's really been intriguing to watch them. It has been. So if you haven't been paying attention to the palms, and it's making me wonder, like, if they're male and female, because, like, there's this guy who he has got one on each side of his driveway. He actually has like half a dozen of the palms in his yard, but he's got one on each side of his driveway, and one of them is just those little spiny spikes. And the other one has actually got the pyramid. And so I'm like, if they're male and female palms, and one of them, it blooms ahead of the other one just by virtue of that. So, I don't know. I don't know anything about palm trees, so it's fascinating. I might look that up later. Are there male and female palms? Do they grow at different times? So, and that's how I learn things. It's like, I'm fascinated, so I go look it up. And then it sticks in my head forever. But I love it. So, all right, it is April 25th. Our title is I Am Established in Right Thinking and I Cannot Be Moved. And our Bible quote is, and lead us not into temptation. Matthew 6:13. I am an outlet for the mind of God. This eternal spirit is always thinking rightly through me, and I rejoice in its perfect action in my consciousness. I am never tempted to think evil, for God is in me as my defense and my deliverance. Knowing that spirit is the cause of my being, I cannot be led into temptation. I am strong in the Lord and the power of his right thinking. To every negative that appears in my thoughts, I am invalid. Nothing but God and his perfect ideas have power in me, nor can act through me. I stand firmly for the truth. I believe that this is God's universe, and I am willing that God should run his universe. I cease my human opinions and my human judgments. I let God act through me. I let his mind make every decision. I let divine love handle all of my personal relationships. I relax and let infinite truth reveal itself in my life and affairs. I have faith that the Holy Spirit of right action is now in full dominion in my consciousness. I am not led into temptation to believe that a power opposes me. I know that mind alone is power, and all of mind is for me. I decide whether my world shall be heaven or hell. My thinking and feeling alone determine my experience. Therefore, never again will I be tempted to blame outer circumstances and other people for my own wrong thinking. I think rightly always. I am permanently established in right thinking, and I cannot be moved. I leave the old patterns of thought, and now I think God's ideas with him. My life is rich in love, and all my ways are peace, for I am an expression of a mind that never wavers. All right. So, 1, hardball metaphysics, and 2, it's thinking like that can get us in a whole lot of trouble if we are not firmly established in divine love. All right? Because there's that line in there where he says, I let divine love handle all of my personal relationships. And that's it. Because we've got a whole lot of people telling us what God thinks and what God does, and that they're sent by God and this, that, and the other thing. And then you watch what they do and you're going, yeah, but what you're doing is not loving. What you're doing is not kind. What you're doing is not compassionate. What you're doing is not creative, meaning it's destructive. How can you be sent by God? Now, the truth is everybody is sent by God. But the question becomes, are we acting in God? Are we acting in God? Are we acting in our own ego? And love is that point. Love is that point. If the action that I am taking benefits me and doesn't harm anybody, then I'm okay. If the action I'm taking benefits a whole lot of people but harms some people, then I'm not. Then I'm not doing what God wants. If the action that I'm taking benefits a whole lot of people but is harmful to me, I'm not acting in God's I'm not thinking as God. To think as God, then the action must be beneficial to everyone that it affects. That's divine love. That's divine love. Now, we can get these funny ideas about what is beneficial to people. And that's where I want to talk about that divine no. Because divine love is not enabling bad behavior. Okay? That's the divine no. Divine love does not enable bad behavior. So just because you think it's something loving, if in the long run it is an enabling bad behavior in another person, that's not divine love. All right? That we call it tough love in the West, and in the East they call it love. And you can get into the whole subjective and objective love. So I've been in it before. I'm not going to go into it today, but that's what, anytime I hear I'm established in right thinking and I cannot be moved. What is right thinking? Always start with love. Always start with love. Okay. Lead us not to temptation, from Matthew. I am an outlet for the mind of God. You are an outlet for the mind of God. That's what we are. We have been created as divine expressions. We have our experience so that God can have an experience. So we are outlets for the mind of God. This eternal spirit is always thinking rightly through me. The spirit is always thinking rightly through me. The action that I take, that's where we can muddy the waters. So the eternal spirit is always thinking rightly through us, and we rejoice in its perfect action in our consciousness. I mean, check your gut. If you are really good at listening to the small, still voice, you'll know. I am never tempted to think evil, for God is in me as my defense and my deliverance. Love. I am never tempted to think evil, for love is in me as my defense and my deliverance. Okay? So you can use the word God, but you can also use the word love. Kindness, compassion. You can use all of those qualities of God in that statement. Knowing that spirit is the cause of my being. Spirit is the cause of our being. I cannot be led into temptation. I am strong in the Lord and the power of God's right thinking. All right? We are not led into temptation when we hold to that divine love. To every negative that appears in my thoughts, I am invalid. So Ernest right there is not saying we're not going to have negative thoughts. But what he's saying is that when they appear, we recognize them for what they are and we let them pass. We don't act on them. We let them go. So he's not saying they won't happen. He's just saying we are not prey to them. Nothing but God and God's perfect idea has power in me nor can act through me. Now you want to walk through the world? Say that to yourself before you leave your house every day. Say that when you open your eyes in the bed. Nothing but God and God's perfect idea have power in me and nor can act through me. Set that as your intention. And I'd say that most of the time, you will make the right choice. I stand firmly for the truth. I believe that this is God's universe, and I am willing that God should run God's universe. I cease my human opinion and human judgments. Okay, I admit that's not always easy. That's not always easy. We have an idea of how things should go. And sometimes we get in our own way. And what that statement says is, okay, I get it. I'm a little over my head here and I need help. And so I am turning to the ultimate source of my being, and I'm getting my human judgments, my material judgments, and my material opinions out of the way and letting that divine love in. I let God act through me. I let God's mind make every decision. And all that's doing is saying that we're using the higher mind. Instead of using the mind with the lowercase m, we're using the capital M. We're using the divine mind. We are elevating our thoughts. I let divine love handle all of my personal affairs. I let divine love handle all of my personal affairs. And that's where that divine no comes in. So, because divine love absolutely can say no. God does not say no. God does not say no. But divine love in personal relationships can say no, because somebody comes to you and asks for something that you cannot give, you are allowed to say no. Divine love does not ask you to say yes when it's not, when you can't do it. When you can't do it. I relax and let the infinite truth reveal itself in my life and affairs. So sometimes I'm sitting in the middle of the mess and go, oh God, I don't know what's going on. And God says, don't worry, I got this. Now, that does not mean I get to sit in the middle of the mess. It just means that I have recognized that I am in the middle of the mess. And I have now asked for help. And then I get up and I start to clean up my mess. And as I'm cleaning up my mess, I am open to and accepting of divine guidance. All right? God's not going to pluck me out of the mess and put me in something else. God's going to help me clean it up. I got myself there. I can get myself out. But I'm going to get myself out with divine help. I have faith that the Holy Spirit of right action is now in full dominion in my consciousness. I am not led into temptation to believe that a power oppresses me. Okay, I'm not led into the temptation to believe that a power oppresses me. That's, okay, I freely admit as a woman, that's hard for me to say. That is hard for me to say. Because I look around and I go, well, religion, culture, society, advertising, they all have this idea of me that's not me. So what do I mean by I'm not letting that power oppress me? exactly that. I am letting all of their ideas, their human ideas and their human judgments go. And I am moving on with who and what I actually am. The divine spark that I am. And in the socio-political powers that do actually oppress people, I am working to end those. So, I am not led into the temptation to believe that a power oppresses me. I'm not letting anybody tell me who I am. I am not letting anybody tell me what I should be, what I should look like, any of that. And in the material constraints that do actually oppress people, I'm actively working to right that. I know that the mind alone is power, and all of mind is for me. I decide whether my world should be heaven or hell. That goes back to that Shakespeare quote. Nothing is good or evil, it's thinking that makes it so. If you live in heaven or you live in hell, it's your idea of it. And the easiest way to get out of hell is to change your thinking. And when you change your thinking, you begin to change your actions. When you change your actions, you begin to change your surroundings. Does it happen immediately? Sometimes. Most of the time we have to work our way out. And when we are in hell, we have the right to go and ask for help. And that means any kind of help. That is material help, prayer help, spiritual help, all of that, mental health help, all of that. So I decide whether my world shall be heaven or hell. Meaning I take active steps in either direction. My thinking and feeling alone determine my experience. Sometimes that's all we have control over is our feelings. We may get in a situation where we have absolutely no control over our environment, but we can change our thinking. And as we change our thinking, things around us start to shift. And maybe we decide that we're worth more than the situation we're in and we get out. Therefore, never again will I be tempted to blame outer circumstances and other people for my wrong thinking. I think rightly always. I am permanently established in right thinking, and I cannot be moved. Say that to yourself. We are permanently established in right thinking, and we cannot be moved. And that is how we can get through this world. That is how we create a world that works for everyone, by right thinking. And what does right thinking mean? Always leads with love. Kindness, compassion, creativity, unity, harmony, peace, joy. That's right thinking. It is okay to think, who does this benefit? It is okay to think, will this harm anybody? We always ought to check that. Because if it's going to harm anybody, including ourselves, it's not right thinking. It's not right thinking. I leave the old patterns of thought, and I now think God's ideas with God. Okay. I leave the old patterns of thought, and I elevate my thought. I come up out of the material. I move into the spiritual. And I let those thoughts think me. I let those creative thoughts think me. I let those loving thoughts create me. I let those compassionate thoughts think me. I go back to God's idea of me. I go back to God's idea of you. My life is rich in love, and all my ways are peace, for I am an expression of a mind that never wavers. So our mission, should we choose to accept it? I don't know. Our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to let God's mind make every decision and let divine love handle all of our personal relationships. It's a terrifying prospect, isn't it? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe, maybe not. It's one of those it's like walk through this world and do no harm. Do no harm. And by thinking God's thoughts, by believing that we have not only the right, but the power, or the power and the right to think with God's mind. It's the mind we were made from and made of. We absolutely can think with that mind and recognize that there's nothing that stands against us. We frequently get in our own way, but there's no power that opposes us. So I would encourage you, as I always do, to do something loving for yourself, do something kind for yourself, do something compassionate for yourself. It is an absolutely gorgeous day out there. Looks like it's in the low 60s. It is a perfect time to go out, get a face full of sun, allow the breeze to just caress you. Allow the sun to kiss you. Get some fresh air. I would encourage you to do something to engage your mind and your body, but I also encourage you to rest. So when I say engage your mind and your body, I'm not necessarily talking about exercise. Sometimes I'm talking about just getting up, going for a walk, moving, changing the view that you have been looking at. Because if you change the view, you can change the ideas. Springtime is a perfect time to just go out and admire your neighbor's flowers. I had the grace of being able to tell my neighbor who lives across the street how beautiful I thought his garden was. And he laughed. But it's a pleasure to live across the street from that gorgeousness, and I enjoy going out every day and seeing it. And he keeps it beautiful. He and his wife keep it beautiful all year. All year. Even in the dead of winter, they find a way to make that thing beautiful. So that's what I'm talking about when I say engage your mind and your body. It may just be walking outside, walking a little way down and looking at something beautiful. All right. It can also mean going to the park and going for a run or a bike ride or, whatever it is that you can do for fun that moves your body and moves your mind and moves your heart. All right. I do want to remind you, you are a beloved child of God in whom God is well pleased, always and forever. This is the state of grace that we live in. All right? So, take care of yourself. Drink some water. Open your windows. Get some fresh air. Air it out. Air the house out. Air your mind out. Air your feelings out. Tell someone you love them today. Look in your own eyes. Tell yourself you love you. It's one of the things I always want to encourage is to look into each other's eyes and see God looking back at you. Because he talked about heaven today. He talked about it's our thinking that puts us in heaven and hell. So open the windows of your soul and allow that breath of heaven to remind you, you do live in heaven now. It's your thinking that makes it so. All right. So, just completely lost my mind. Right here on Facebook Live, we are going to have an amazing service for you at 11 a.m. Reverend Jesse is finishing up his Flower Power series. It's on the flowering of positivity. So please come check that out. If you don't catch us Facebook Live, we are on YouTube later on in the day. And Reverend David will be on with you around 5. I'll be back on Facebook Live around 9. And as always, these are archived. Mine are archived on the Running Rev Ryan YouTube channel. So you can catch me there, or you can catch all of the chalks from Jesse for the last year. And I don't even know how long we've been doing it. on the YouTube channel, the Creative Life Spiritual Center YouTube channel. So please go look those two channels up. Feel free to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day, beloveds, and know that you're loved.